Is your team ready to soar to new heights? At CTO Africa Leadership, we specialize in transforming potential into performance. Whether it's mastering winning with people, enhancing emotional intelligence, decoding human behavior, or strengthening team leadership, we've got you covered. Dive into personal leadership and elevate your corporate governance standards. Our tailor-made programs are designed to unlock your team's full potential. Don't settle for ordinary. Be extraordinary. Book a discovery call with CTL Africa today, and let's design a development program that transforms your team. Visit our website www.ctlafricaleadership.com. Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Platform. And wherever you're joining us from, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Joy, and I'm excited to be here. We are happy to bring you another amazing learning experience on the Leadership Platform. And today is episode 189. Can you imagine? It's been years and years of learning, and we thank you all so much for being a part of our journey. As we welcome you, please use the chat feature, introduce yourself, let us know where you are joining us from. I'm joining you from Accra, Ghana. It's a beautiful weather this evening, and let me know where you are connecting with us from. Thank you. I see Awofia Joe, who is a very regular, learner. And I see Quindo as well joining us. Awo is from Dome, Accra. Quindo, where are you joining us from? Please feel free to share the link with your network. Let us know let them know that the leadership platform is live. Today we have an amazing topic, an amazing subject we're going to be diving in. And I don't know, most of you who saw the flyer or the marketing information, what were your thoughts when you saw the leadership shadow? Understanding your leadership shadow. I had a lot of questions because I was very eager as to what is going to be in this presentation. And we have no other person than our very favorite partner, Catherine Engmann, who's going to be doing us the honors this evening. So I encourage you to share. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. All right. Thank you, Bless, for joining us today. This afternoon, we had a beautiful session with our Young Leaders Learning Lab. We're running a 6-week program for our young leaders, taking them through the leadership principles, personal development, and all the good things that go into being a leader of influence. We had an amazing time this afternoon. Okay, so I'm going to bring Catherine on so we dive right into the conversation. Good evening, Catherine. Welcome again for your 3rd time this year. I think you are the record holder.
Really? Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Honestly, at least someone has me, so I'm grateful.
No, honestly, it's been an exciting year. We actually have 38 days to the end of the year. And for those of you who are on this platform, you know Catherine already. She's a corporate governance consultant and executive leadership coach. And Catherine, I wanted to ask you this one question before we get started. Okay. I mean, we've been round the year. I mean, we just have 38 days to go. And what you do, you teach boards, you teach leaders how to go about their job, how to get the best out of their work. What has surprised you the most this year? Something you didn't, what has surprised you? Or what have you learned from your work with the people you've worked with leaders in different boardrooms? What is that one thing that has surprised you?
Okay, I wouldn't say it's so much as a surprise, but a new awareness that
New awareness.
I,
Okay.
a new awareness. And what I've actually noticed is that a lot of leaders are appointed to boards because of their professional expertise, but
Mm,
very few of them have gone through any personal development work, which for me was like,
okay.
ooh, yes, yes. So that's been a new
Mm,
awareness. And so in doing the work
wow.
that I do, it's really about bringing the softer skills like leadership shadows into the boardroom so we can have those discussions. Yeah,
Mm,
that's been a new awareness.
that's very interesting. And I mean, what qualifies someone to be on a board? Maybe I'm very curious because I've just been thinking about it.
Well, it's usually someone that has reached a pinnacle of expertise in their area.
Mm,
With boards, they often appoint people with different skills. So they might appoint a lawyer, a governance expert, an HR professional. It's usually people that have reached a certain level of experience that can bring wisdom to
hmm.
board deliberations. Yes, so that's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you always have to think carefully about your board. It just cannot be an uncle or a friend. You need that wisdom in the room to guide your organization.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
And
you
you
so
asked
much
about
for that.
experience, what
Yeah.
qualifies you to be a board member, but there's certain behaviors you need to exhibit when you
Mm,
join a board. And that's another
okay.
topic altogether.
Altogether, definitely. We would
Altogether.
have you on for another session for deeper into corporate governance
Yes.
sessions. But tonight we're going to talk about understanding the leadership shadow. The leadership shadow. What came to my mind when I saw the topic? I thought, are we going on a journey into some alleyways? You know, are we going to go into our past? It had a bit of to it.
Mm.
Yeah, some mystery in there. So I just cannot wait for you to get into this. And so I'm going to leave the floor for you. And I want to encourage our audience. This is something that every professional in your network needs to hear. So share it with your work colleagues. They may be having a good time, but they would hear and learn something this evening. And then share your comments as Catherine goes through her presentation, as well as some questions you may have for her. Yeah, so I'll leave you with Catherine and we'll be right back. Take us away.
Thank, thank you, Joy. Good evening, or good morning, from wherever you're calling in from. And I just like to acknowledge some people that I see in the chat. Hello, Awo. Hello, Bless. Hello, Portia. Welcome, everyone. This evening, we're going to talk about the concept of a leadership shadow. And you're probably wondering, what is a leadership shadow? Larry Sen, who is regarded as the godfather of corporate culture, said that the shadow you cast is more important than the words that you say. Just allow that to percolate. The shadow that you cast is more important than the words that you say. Have you ever worked for a boss who was full of promises but never delivered on them? Or maybe worked with somebody who is excited at the start of the project but then goes silent with no follow through? Or have you met somebody who has had really, really high expectations of you but doesn't meet them themselves? Or maybe someone who has very high expectations of themselves, like me, that they cannot even meet? Or have you met somebody who's been very quick to point out mistakes but doesn't give any praise? I think you'll all agree that we've all experienced someone like that at our stage in their life? Or are you that person? Go, be honest. Is that you? And every leader casts a shadow. So beware of the fact that people will do what you do. And like John Maxwell said, followers do what followers see. As leaders, everything we do and say has an impact not only on our actions, but it influences everyone around us. And so it's important that we understand our own impact, i.e., the shadow that we cast. It's so difficult to see that our own shadow. It's so difficult to see the impact that we have on others. And the point is that we've got to do this with intention. And so what I'm about to share with you is really about the leadership shadow and how it might show up so that you can create your own shadow with intention. What is the leadership shadow? And here's a definition. It represents the influence leaders have, as I explained earlier, that everything we do casts a shadow. And this can be conscious or unconsciously. And so the leadership shadow represents the influence that leaders have consciously or unconsciously on the organizational culture, whether good or whether bad. And they do this through their actions, the words, and the decisions. And the leader's shadow can actually be so wide that it affects the culture of the entire organization. Examples of leadership shadows can be positive. So this is a leader who would consistently demonstrate a culture of trust, or is transparent, or a negative shadow where, and I'm giving you an answer, it's a leader who might micromanage and create a culture of fear. And I'd like you to type in the chat for me. What do you think is the most common shadow behaviors that leaders might exhibit? And I'd love to hear that in the chat. What do you think is the most common shadow behaviors that leaders might exhibit? So let's hear from you in the chat. I'd like to see some people. Okay. I only have access to a limited chat, so I can't see. But just type those in the chat. What you think is the most common shadow behaviors that leaders exhibit? And I've given you some answers there. Lack of listening. Thank you, Foster. Lack of listening. So some common derailment behaviors in leadership. For example, not listening. Ego, that's a derailment behavior. The failure to adapt, and you've got micromanagement, overly controlling, not allowing people to actually do the work that they've been employed to do, a lack of teamwork. Just notice for yourself where this comes up. As I was preparing for this session and I was reflecting on some of my behaviors, I was like, oh, I've noticed more recently when I'm in meetings that I might have a tendency to talk over people or interrupt them because there's just something on my mind and it's like, okay, I need to get it off my chest. And it was so humbling when I got to that awareness about myself. So I would say that one of the things that I struggle with and I'm working on is listening and not interrupting. Faridatu, absolutely. Not acknowledging your wins, absolutely. Failing to celebrate, constantly negativity. And Fifi, absolutely. Ego and arrogance, absolutely. And the failure to adapt. What about yourselves? Where do you struggle in leadership? However, what I'm going to share with you is that it's all well and good knowing what it is that you need to change. But it's not that easy because there is a factor. You can do all the personal development work and you may want to change, but there's some things that are behind us that we need to overcome. And this was supposed to be a scary picture, but beware. Woo, woo, woo! Family ghosts can show up in your leadership. I'll repeat that again. Family ghosts can show up in your leadership. Essie, you're also guilty of sometimes talking over others, right? I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at myself. Remembering family ghosts can show up in your leadership. And I'd leave you, this is a funny quote that I saw the other day, a meme, and it said, the past, the present, and the future walked into a bar. It was tense. Do you get it? The past, the present, the future walked into a bar. It was tense. I hope you get it. Anyway, that made me laugh. But how do family elements show up in your leadership? What are the ghosts that show up in your leadership? And according to Harvard Business Review, there are 6 elements that show up. And as I share this, I'm going to use the story of a fictitious leader. Fictitious leader, her name is Sarah. And Sarah is super successful. Sarah's been working as the HR director for a company, a multinational, for the last 20 years. She's ambitious. She's at the top of her career. She's passionate about what she does. Then she finds herself setting up a business with her friends, a new tech business. And Sarah's really passionate about this project. And she's really good at putting in place the structures. She's working on her slides. She just wants to move the business. But here's the problem. When it comes to organizing meetings with funders and partners and prospective clients, Sarah doesn't take action. And this lack of taking action is really holding her back. And Sarah noticed this, and it causes her anxiety and fear. And she starts off the day with a list of all the people she must contact. And when it comes to making appointments, everything else gets in the way of her actually taking action. And so Sarah notices this about herself. And after a period of coaching, she realizes what the issue is. She came from a family where success and education was really, really, really important. And she excelled at school. She had a brother, and we've all got one of those, that black sheep of the family. Actually, that's me and my family. She had a brother who could never excel at school. And because of the pressure that his family put on him, he rather detached and he withdrew from the family. And it really caused an issue in the relationship. And so the unconscious belief and bias that Sarah has is that when she's successful and she outshines her peers in this new business that she runs, she's going to make them very angry and they're going to alienate themselves from her. So she's working with that subconscious belief that it's not good to be successful because I will lose the people that I'm working with. And so Sarah then has to embark on a period of reflection and change and really understand what is it that is hindering her so that she can get over it. So Harvard Business Review have 6 areas that they believe that show up in terms of your family elements, how your family elements show up in your leadership. And the first is the values and beliefs. See, every family has its own character and has values and beliefs that are transmitted through the generations and they guide behavior. So for example, you might have heard that rich people are bad. And so subconsciously, you don't actually want to be rich and successful because you may be bad, and people won't like you. You may have heard education is the most important thing in life. And basically, you then develop that belief that only education is what's going to get you ahead. We've all heard this in my family. It was, Catherine, don't hurt other people's feelings. You've got to care for people. You've got to be considerate, Catherine. And the assumption and the belief that I derived from that was relationships are more important. Take care of people. And that shows up in my leadership. And for example, most African families, you must be a doctor or a lawyer, or else the family will be embarrassed. And basically, that is causes real pressure for you to maintain the family standing in the community. So, just take a moment and identify what beliefs and values have been in your family. What are the shoulds? How people should act? When have they served you well? And when do you think they get in your way? For example, with mine that, Catherine, don't hurt people's feelings or be compassionate and care for people, really hurts my leadership because I'm not able to have the difficult conversations with my staff because I may hurt their feelings. It really pulls me back. And I only came to this awareness the other day as I was preparing for this. And so when your family's beliefs are at odds with your success, that can show up. And for example, like using Sarah as the example that I used the other day, her belief was that a daughter must be a top performer. And currently, so she was always pushing herself. And so your family's core beliefs, what are they and how are they showing up? How are they serving you or not? What roles did you play in your family? Because every family has roles that people play. I'm sure you've heard in some families that, somebody is, somebody is just like their grandmother, they're exactly like their grandmother. Or families will label one child as success and then another as a disappointment. And sometimes children take on the role of the decision maker because maybe the parents were unable to take care of the family. Or some roles would be like, I've always got to tell jokes. I've got to be the happy one so that I stop any family fights. Or some roles, you may be the troublemaker. And here's the thing. The role that you play in the family tends to be the one that you fall into easily at work. And in my family, I'm the first daughter, first girl, and I took on the role because of some challenges that we had in the family. I took on the role of, I'm the big sister, I'm looking after my sisters. I had to look after my other two sisters. So I assumed the role of the mother, nurturing. And that shows up in my leadership. Whenever I have a new job or I go into a new place, I'm the role of the nurturer. It's like, I've got to take care of everyone. It doesn't always serve me. So what roles did you play in your family when you were young? And what about your other family members? And how did your roles relate to theirs? So asking yourself that, how does that dynamic show up in your role as a leader? And so Sarah, our fictitious leader, was able to identify all the roles that she played as a child. She was a successful child. She was the doer. And her brother was the troublemaker, and he was the rebel. And so whenever her family, her mother and father would fight with her brother, she would take on the role of the peacemaker and the supporter, always trying to soothe the feelings of others and calm the storm. As you identify the ghosts in your family, in your leadership, just take a note of why it might be difficult or scary even to leave behind a role or identity, or even when you aspire to be different. For me, I can't think of being anything else other than a nurturing leader. It doesn't always serve me. It's very scary to let go of that role. So what do we do? The next one is family secrets. We all know that most family have secrets. There's in my family, there's apparently the wayward auntie who always kept disappearing. But we never spoke about her. She was always a secret. And there are often secrets in our family that you don't share with other people. And these often involve either substance abuse, maybe alcohol, drug abuse, or sexual abuse even, mental illness, sexual orientation, about divorce, money. What are the secrets? What are the taboos? What subjects were off limit in your family, right? And how do they affect your ability to lead? In our fictitious leader, Sarah's family, the unacknowledged secret was that her brother was a ne'er-do-well. However, they needed to present that the brother is accomplished because their parents wanted to keep it a secret. So he's doing well, he's very successful. And so whenever he acted out or he lost friends or he caused trouble, the family just treated it as a one-time affair. And they would always hide it, so much so that Sarah never even realized that the nature of her brother's problems. And at work, she then found herself keeping secrets. Whenever she dealt with problematic colleagues, she then reverted as though she was dealing with her brother. And when people on her team were not performing well, she treated it as something as never to be talked about. And when she did so, she lost the opportunity to give important feedback. So what were your family secrets? And what subjects were actually taboo to your family? And what's totally off limits? Pay attention to that. What about boundaries? Why this is important is that people feel more comfortable, and this is often, I'm not saying always, more often, people feel more comfortable working in organizations that have boundaries like their families. So thinking about your own situation, how would you characterize your family? Because all families have different ways in which they had structure and boundaries. Like in some families, you had a certain wake-up time, a certain bedtime. You had to be home at a certain time, otherwise you're going to get into trouble, right? In some families, when I was growing up in England, some people's houses I'd go to, and it's dinner time, you have to leave, right? Strict boundaries. Dinner is at this time. But in some families, anything goes. You can show up to dinner 1 hour, 2 hours late, bring 10 friends with you. It's not a problem. However, when we're in organizations, we'll know that we'll feel more comfortable with companies that have similar environments to the way we grew up. So did you grow up with a structured family with clear rules, or did you grow up in one with a lot of flexibility and maybe even chaos? If that's the case, then you'd like working in those companies with no structure, lots of chaos. I don't do very well with that. When I work in places with no chaos, oh my gosh, it does something to my head. So how did you grow up? Pay attention to that. With Sarah, fictitious leader, it had very well she lived in a family that had very well defined boundaries, and so she loved working for bureaucratic structured organizations with rules and expectations. She was comfortable in that area, but she was itching. You know, that sometimes you just want to change because you're just fed up of being within this structure and defined boundaries. But you're so scared. You're just too scared to move. It's because there's something, the family ghosts are holding you back. And it's a psychologist called Robert Keegan who said that in adult development, it's normal to want to move from your socialized self, which is the self that meets others' expectations, into a state of self-authoring, which is where you are defining your own values, your ideas, and your modes of operating. But your ghosts will slow you down in this transition. Where are you being slowed down when you want to make a change? Pay attention to that. Triangles. This is my favorite one. You often think of family dynamics like father, son, one-to-one relationships. For example, you may be afraid of your father, or a sibling is overshadowing another. These triangles, though, are very, very important because what happens is that different roles and different dynamics. For example, when there's somebody present, maybe if, let's say, for example, the grandparents are present, then the parents will never discipline a child, right? That's an example of a triangle. That's the family dynamic. Or parents may avoid their own conflicts between each other, but then they'll go and complain to the child. That forms a triangle. And children, for example, are masters of this game because they often play one parent off with another. With Sarah, our fictitious leader, from her parents' perspective, she was the good child and her brother was the problem. And when her parents paid attention to her, then it affected the brother, and then he would start acting up. But then when her brother started acting up, her parents would pay the brother attention. And then what happens is that then she feels invisible and ignored, right? And so she then found herself in a triangle at work where she's in this triangle with her boss, her colleagues, and herself. So from the perspective of her boss, she's a good employee. She meets all the expectations. She rises up the ladder. Whereas with her less successful colleagues, they became the problem and they resented her because she was successful, or she thought they did. And so when this came to her awareness, then she then decided that, okay, I'm going to make sure that I collaborate and cooperate with my colleagues and not compete with them. What triangle patterns are in your family? And what were the 3 sides? And how are these patterns repeating themselves in your office and your leadership and your behavior? And do they hinder you in your work? One of the things that I noticed about myself is that my mother always used to say that, Catherine, don't tell on your sisters. It's very bad to tell on your sisters. You've got to make sure that you don't tell on them. So I developed this thing of making sure that I kept everything they were doing that wasn't right to myself. And this also shows up now in my leadership. When it's so weird, when somebody is not behaving or doing the right thing at work, or my boss is questioning me about why something has happened, I will often take the blame because I shouldn't be telling on anyone. This stuff is deep. So what patterns are repeating in your office and your leadership? And then we have expectations and mastery. These are part of the factors, the family systems that affect our families. Of course, our parents have expectations of ourselves. Some children work hard to live up to the expectations of their parents. And when they do that, they develop a sense of mastery. And that helps to define them as an adult. But some fail to meet the family expectations, right? But they may achieve mastery somewhere else. For example, I was always supposed to be a lawyer. I didn't meet that expectation, but I achieved mastery in my area of being a governance consultant. But some people actually may just buckle under the weight of the expectation and just rebel. And I've seen that in some families, some organizations, right? But what we found, and I have been coaching a lot of these leaders, I'm now realizing that their expectations of their family are still weighing heavily on their shoulders. The other day in a coaching session with a senior executive, a CEO of an organization, she broke down. She was pursuing her second PhD, the pressure of doing this. She already has about 6 degrees and other professional certifications, embarking on a second PhD. And she finally broke down because the voice in her head of her father she was still trying to please, and he has been dead for 20 years, was that nothing good is ever going to come out of you. And so there's this expectation on her to make sure that she pleases her father. What are the expectations in your family? Did you meet them? Are you still trying to meet them? I still have sadness in myself because I haven't got my PhD. When I am a daughter of 2 academics, it was always expected that, of course, I'd go into academia and of course I'd get my PhD, right? As well as being a lawyer. How was I going to fit it in? But I still have this sense of shame that I didn't excel academically like my parents had expected. So how does all of this affect you and how you respond to expectations at work? And we're going to look at the path to change. But before we do that, let's have a quick break and I'll be back.
I am winning on all fronts limitlessly.
I have made tremendous improvement at work through delegating and empowering teams.
We started with the law of intentionality, which specifically makes it clear that growth cannot just happen. You have to be intentional about your growth.
CTO Africa Leadership brings you the Grow Journey, a series of masterclasses based on John C. Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. In this 10-week virtual growth accelerator, you will acquire the skills to thrive and flourish as you evolve into a more impactful and fulfilled individual. You will master the art of personal and professional development as you craft and execute your customized growth plan. Limited seats available. Register now for the next cohort.
Hey there, join the next cohort of CTO Ghana's growth journey.
The next cohort is coming on. Get involved and your life will never be the same.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. We're talking about ghosts that show up in our leadership, family ghosts that show up in our leadership. And we've spoken about how they may show up. And now we're going to look at how to change. Here's the great thing is that your family ghosts are part of you. You can't change them. They're there. But they don't have to define you. And some of the ghosts will make you resilient. Some of the ghosts are good. Work hard, self-mastery. Celebrate those ghosts and build on them. Okay. However, in those ghosts that are not serving you, know that you can change them. First step is to identify them. Review the questions I've been asking and jot down in your journal some of the family dynamics. I'm actually going to go back and ask my mother a lot more questions than I have done in the past, because I really want to understand a few more things. And one of the things that may surprise you, take a note of them and discuss it with your family if they're open. Because when you do this exercise, which I did myself, I had an aha moment. A light bulb went off. I was telling you earlier that discovering about myself that always hearing this, that I shouldn't hurt people's feelings, be considerate of others, doesn't allow me to hold my staff accountable enough and stops me from having difficult conversations. And I felt this sense of shame and guilt when I saw that, but it's okay. It's okay. The first step to change is self-awareness. And once you start on the journey, over time, things will unfold. Remember, as I said earlier, as you identify them, make a note of why it may be difficult or even scary to leave that behind, even when you want to be different. And set a goal to change, because even though some of the ghosts are good, focus on the ones that are good and build on them. And then when you think about the ones that hinder you, set a goal to change. For example, how can you be more productive as a leader? So for me, it's how can I become comfortable with having difficult conversations? And when you've identified your goal, frame it in such a way that it's not going to affect your old triggers. For example, another executive that I coach, external validation and respect is really important. And so for her, if she were to set a goal for change, she would set something that is not going to make her get triggered around validation. So for example, she could set a goal, for example, that if people don't do X, Y, Z, it doesn't mean they don't respect me. For example, another person that I worked with as well wanted to become more visionary, wanted to become more strategic, but he was in a family that always made him put his plans on hold because he had a sister that wasn't well. She had sickle cell, and always his plans for himself were always being put on hold because he had to help his sister. And sometimes when he didn't, his mother would get very, very upset with him and accuse him of being selfish. And so he would internalize that and hold on to it. And so every time he was at work and he had a goal that was relating to being more strategic and visionary, that would start triggering his feeling of selfishness, right? And so he couldn't move forward. He couldn't spread all the ideas he had because he was being selfish, because it's like his ambition needed to be shut down. Another executive that I work with also worked in a family, he lived in a family where his father remarried and his stepmother didn't like him. So he often hid himself in his bedroom so that he wouldn't be seen and get into trouble. And when we were having a coaching session, one of the things that he needed to do was he came to me because he wanted to be more visible. He wanted to take action, more publicity, but he felt like something was holding him back. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 coaching sessions later that we realized that that past of his stepmother being so difficult and not wanting him around and him hiding in his bedroom was exactly how he was showing up. He was constantly hiding. And so be sure to set a goal that doesn't trigger the old family ghosts. And then when you've got a goal, one of the things that I always say to myself, one of the things I do, rather than just setting goals, I also set an intention for how it is I want to show up. Okay. And I think I can't remember who said this, but basically that identifying role models that have been successful at doing what it is that I want to do, doesn't matter if I know those people or not, just analyzing their behavior and using that as an intention for the way that I am going to show up. And that's very, very important because it's not just about setting the goal, but actually finding the behaviors that you want to model and continue to reflect on it. Because if you do not imagine that future that you want to create yourself or for your leadership, you will not be able to change. Questions that I always ask myself, where do I want to be myself in 10 years? And develop a vision for that. What are the family goals that I need to embrace and celebrate? And what are those that I should just leave behind me? This summarizes it. We all know that to improve our self-awareness, we need to engage in continuous feedback. To minimize our shadow, to have a positive light shadow, self-awareness is important. Feedback, seek feedback. I've heard it said that when you are in the picture, you can't see the frame. It's so interesting that people can see things about myself. The other day, again, another new awareness hit me, and this is a little personal, so I won't share that. And I asked my friends, they said, oh, but didn't you know? I was like, oh, no. Setting an intention for the kind of leader that you want to be, I've mentioned that, and then modeling the desired behaviors. Create a personal development plan and take action. Small steps, because change doesn't happen overnight. To reflect, ask yourself, what are the 3 words people in the organization would use to describe my leadership today? If you're not sure, ask people, what are 3 words you would use to describe my leadership? And what are the 3 words that you want them to use in the future? One of the things that I want to be known for, and I'm still working on it, is a leader that keeps her commitments. I keep my commitments to my staff, but I'm not as good keeping my commitments in terms of meeting my deadlines and delivery because I'm constantly overwhelmed. And one of the things that is causing that overwhelm is, Catherine, you've got to do what you're told. You've got to do what you're asked. Be a good girl. That was a family ghost, and that's showing up in my leadership. And that's an area of work that I need to do. Oh, I tell you, I have so much work to do on myself. You have no idea. And the work never stops. And looking at the gaps, what is the gap between where you are and where you want to be? So just another summary. Baby steps, self-awareness, knowing what positive shadow that you want to have, and baby steps, committing to one behavior that you will change. It doesn't have to be overnight. doesn't have to be overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. Just like you learned to, it took you a while to learn to read. It takes new behaviors take a while. I hope you found this useful. Just to recap, we talked about understanding your leadership shadow and the fact that the shadow that you cast is more important than the words that you say. And everybody casts a shadow, so be aware of the shadow. Because people do what people see. And our family elements show up in our leadership. And these are our core our beliefs and our core values, the roles that we played within our family, the family secrets that we had to hold on to, what sorts of boundaries existed in our families, what were the drama triangles within the family. They also show up in our leadership. And what expectations were there? And what are you still holding on to? What is the guilt? What is the shame that you have around those expectations? And then lastly, improving our leadership skills requires self-reflection, self-awareness, journaling, and identifying, setting the intention of the kind of leader that you want to be, and identifying somebody or role models that exhibit those behaviors. I hope that you found this useful. I would love to hear more from you in the chat. Thank you. Joy, over to you. I'm done.
Thank you, Catherine. Amazing. I knew it was going to be good. And I feel like you have just opened where they say the cabinet with a skeleton. I feel like you've just opened it up and a lot of thoughts were rushing through my mind. So would love to hear from you in the comments. How did you find the presentation? What was going through your mind as Catherine was sharing? And I think it's so important what you shared because I knew there were influences because the way we were formed, our family shaped us into who we have become. I definitely knew that, that impact shows up. For me, I actually started my first leadership role at age 5 because in my primary school, they would elect a class prefect. And I have no idea at 5 what exactly I would do to get nominated or picked as a class leader. And they always had that burden of having to take care of the rest of the pack, and I could relate to what you were sharing. Very interesting. I mean, another thing that I picked up, as you shared, was there was always the need to ask for permission and approval, when you had out of the box thinking ideas, if it was not something that was always open for everybody to do. And I realized that had a very big influence when you had new ideas and you were not sure how it was going to be received. So you always would hold back and make sure to find if people would buy into it, see the comments, see the facial reaction before you even step forward to show something like that. So I think this is a very important, like the can of worms you've opened up, and just to be able to reflect on how all of these shows up in our leadership. So many of them kept coming to my mind, and I felt it was so poignant. I know my team is here, Mr. Im is here. They all have a few questions to also share. But let me see what else is coming in the comments. A few comments came through as
Oh,
we
I
were
see a
sharing.
couple of I see it. You see, there I go again. I'm interrupting you, Joy. Didn't I say that at the beginning? But I see AC or AC entry. Thank you for joining. Bless you. And Abna
Yeah.
Apiaka. I can't believe you're here. Abna is actually I mean, she's the person that's probably known me the longest in the universe. She's known me since I was 8 years old, right?
And she's joining us from Qatar.
I know,
Wonderful,
right? It's
wonderful,
going to be
wonderful.
late. Thank you,
Yeah,
Abna. Oh, bless you, Olivia. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bless
yeah.
you,
Same,
Olivia, for that
same, same
feedback.
with
I
Hector.
appreciate it. Hector,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm going to get Uncle Sam on, and then probably Sarah, if it's okay. We'll get you on. Let's ask a few questions to Catherine. Let's deepen the conversation a bit more. Yes,
I would like them to ask themselves questions. I don't want them to ask me any
Oh, Catherine, that was great. But before I go on
yeah.
to share what I want to share, because it's given me a lot of reflections. Okay. I just want to get, was it 6 elements or five?
It was 6.
It was
Six.
6. I had
Yes.
values and beliefs. Is it one?
Yes.
I
Yes.
had family secrets. 2.
Yes. And then
I had boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
which is 4, which is the 3.
with 3.
I had triangles,
Mm-hmm.
which is 4.
Mastery.
I had
Mm-hmm.
expectations and mastery. Are they 2 or 1?
No. And then there was
Expectations.
family roles. Family
Uh-huh.
roles.
Family
So that's
roles
the
was
one I
number 2.
missed.
Yes.
Family roles. Okay,
Yes.
so that's one. That's the one that I missed. But honestly, because you asked us to do the reflections,
Yeah.
and I think you've shared a bit of yours, and probably for all of us, it would be useful to share also, because I I can see the the reflection, some of the things that I mean, I've been aware of it, but I don't know how to get it out. I grew up in a background from nowhere, and I had to get my way through. If you understand where I mean, I came from very far, as we say in Ghana, you know, because there was nobody to look up to from the village as to people who have achieved, and you have to do it. And so I became kind of the first graduate, the first lawyer, the first whatever, and I'm the firstborn. And somehow, by the grace of God, I'm able to make it. So somehow, I find it difficult to understand why people cannot make it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I expect people
Mm. Mm.
to to be able to make it. So, in fact, I think it's just this, whether it's yesterday or something, I was saying, Joy, that I feel I am more kind of a laissez-faire leader. I expect people to do what they have to do. And if they don't do it, I get upset. And I don't have the patience for, them. And 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 the other thing is that somehow my eye, because of also the work that I do, my eye has been trained to pick mistakes, kind of, So when I take a document, I mean, let me tell you a story. Yes, Friday or no, was Wednesday. I just landed from Lagos, and I couldn't find my chip, so I walked into the telecell office to replace my chip. And as the lady was working, they had this. I think it's a product, like a board. So immediately I looked at it. I said, but because they are from Vodafone to Telecel, right? So
Yeah.
everything was changed to Telecel this, Telecel that. Then I found 2 lines which still had Vodafone,
Vodafone.
and I
I
said,
love it.
yes. I said, you people, did you decide that this particular product will still be Vodafone? Then she looked at it and said, but this thing has gone through all our management and everybody has seen this and nobody has seen this. I'm going to tell the people, no, it was just nobody has seen it. And he said, people have come here, nobody has seen this. I said, well, my eyes have been trained to pick. So somehow, this kind of behavior, when you're talking about the shadows, I can see how this can affect people, combined with the fact that I expect people to be able to achieve, and if you are not achieving, then you have to get out of my way kind of behavior. And because I was always trying to achieve something, there's no time for celebration. My first birthday card was at 27. Nobody celebrated anything. So I also have I have a difficulty celebrating anything. You see what I mean? Yeah, it's a birthday. Recently, people talking about 60 years. I was in the office working 60 years. You know, I was on Toastmasters of the day. And there was, why are you here? It's another day. So,
it's interesting.
And my team is trying to see what cake is coming or whatever. I don't know, what is it? I mean, guys, let's move on. So I think this is so real, this is so important that we probably need you to come again and to coach us a bit more through, and some of us will need more coaching, because I put now a few things, which I believe is affecting my leadership and maybe how my team are seeing me and I'm not seeing it. And I think it is a good thing that, you brought this out to us. And I'm sharing because I believe that others also probably see, but that will probably help people to also reflect. But I'm going to leave Sarah to go on. But I have one question. We say we shouldn't ask you questions, but I'll ask.
I would just say, Sam, if anyone is interested in doing more of this, there's a great book, Internal Family Systems.
Okay.
And it's such a good, and particularly for us coaches, when we have clients, because people can show up in coaching sessions and different parts of them, are showing up, like the manager, which is like that voice that it's amazing. So if you're interested, internal
very interested. Maybe you want Joy will want to put it in the chat. Now, when you're talking about setting the goals, maybe I didn't get it right. You talk about being careful not to sell the goal that will awaken. I'm paraphrasing the family goals or something.
Yes.
And my question is, what if that goal actually needs to be awakened and exercised? Because that is the one that is actually hurting. That we need to wake him up. So
fumigate.
Maybe that's the one you have to really work on. So I was just thinking, and just wanted you to just clarify a bit.
I agree. You know how the brain, whenever we want to change, our brains are wired to keep us safe. And so if the change is too drastic, we will go back into our subconscious default. And that's where the self-awareness comes in. So yes, set the goal for the change, frame it in such a way that it doesn't trigger that behavior. So for example, this thing about not being seen, my executive, that he didn't want to be seen. The goal that he set was a very small goal, where he would just say yes to small presentations in areas, rather than like a stage with 100 people. He will adequately go and do things like in 20, 30 people, because that didn't trigger him as much. So it's more about making small intentional steps towards that behavior versus it totally triggering you. I struggled with the thing about being seen, and I'm going to disclose, being a light-skinned person in Ghana, I don't want to be seen. Ever since I was young.
You mean
and that's a real thing. No, it's true. Ever since I was young, it's like I just don't want to be seen. And it was really showing up. Sam, I think you only agree that it's only in the last 2 years that I've started being more visible. Because for me, it's a bad thing for me to be seen, because it will get me into trouble or get me too much
Rather,
attention.
in Ghana, everybody wants to see you. You want to show up because you're Brony.
But that's the thing, right? That's the thing. I had to really work and set small goals in small safe spaces that wouldn't trigger those things from the
Yeah,
past.
yeah, yeah. Okay, Sarah, what's yours
Yeah,
now?
yeah. It's been very insightful, and I think
Yeah.
getting to the end of the year, this is really a good lesson for us to sit and reflect and see where we want our leadership to be in the coming years or coming years. Yes. But for me, it was also a time of reflection for me, especially when you spoke about the boundaries. I am somebody who is so structured, right? I'm so structured that it comes out in everything that I do for myself. And therefore, if somebody is not structured, as some was saying, I don't understand. But now I am been able to give people that latitude. I remember even you, I think it was last week, we were on a call, and I said, "Oh, Catherine, let me see. I'll have 5 minutes with you afterwards." And you said, "Oh, what have I done? Right? Okay."
Yeah, that's a family ghost. Sarah, just see,
Yes,
that's a family ghost of mine.
exactly.
I'm telling
Mm.
you. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, my mother is going to slap you. I mean, when
Yes.
it's coming out,
It's so
and I have
true.
a weakness there also because I was so slapped. I decided that this is not good. You don't have to slap people. So I can't punish anybody for anything. We talk about difficult conversations. It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Sarah,
Yes.
sorry, I
So
interrupted.
sorry. Yes.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We are having a conversation. I mean, this is real. This is life. So
Yes.
Yeah.
when she replied that way, it made me reflect, saying, okay, I said that also to somebody else. So it may be the way that I maybe ask people permission. I should be asking permission whether they'll have 5 minutes for me or not to come out and say, I would like to see you. So it's the way it triggers. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
It
Mhm.
triggers people, and you are not the only person. It's happened in other scenarios, and therefore, it's something that I reflected upon last week. And I said, okay, how can I come out in a way when I'm asking permission from people, and not to come out as if I'm giving an order, because that was how
Mhm.
my father was. He was in the military, right?
Mm.
He was in the
Wow.
military, and therefore,
Yes. So it's like,
whatever he says, yeah, it's very direct. So I need to
mm,
house my language in my leadership in such a way that
mm,
I invite people in, and not for people to feel on the defensive. So my
mm,
language, I need to work on that. and
mm,
and, and also the roles. I see myself also leading in my family. I'm the fifth child, but I'm the person who really get things going. Even when I was sick, that's when my sisters really stepped in. Now that I'm feeling better, everything has come back to me.
Go back, do your
oh,
job.
oh no. I hope that doesn't
Everything.
put undue pressure on you again, right?
Exactly. So how can I use that to make sure that I develop them to be able to take over? So
Mm.
quite a
Yeah, they are old dogs. You can't teach them new tricks.
You
yeah.
know, and it's so true. Do you know, with this
Baby
shadow thing,
steps.
baby steps. This,
Yeah.
this leadership shadow thing is really, and the family goes is so deep because, again, as I was preparing for this, because I've had, when you're preparing for something, you really got to do the work.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that about myself, that when clients call me and they want to start negotiating about money or like, how much will you charge? And it's like, in my family, it's like money was not to be discussed. You don't discuss money.
Absolutely.
And it really shows up when I have to send a proposal or people want to know how much you're going to charge. It's like you have to get it out of me. It's
Yeah.
like, whoa. And so when it's
Yeah.
like my company is like financial limit is hit, it's like, okay, Catherine, it's the shadow that you are casting on the organization. It's nothing else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of work to do, a lot of work, but
Yes.
baby steps, baby steps.
Yes.
I'm just taking the
Yes.
one thing that I'm going to work with, and it's the difficult conversations and holding people accountable.
Yes. Yeah. And
Indeed.
when you talk about the roles, and like Sarah was saying, that was the firstborn, and I didn't like the beatings, so I want to do everything, and I want to do it so well because I. And so if somebody has to do something and they haven't done it,
You take it up.
even if they have not been asked, I will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes my mother will still beat me. That's not, I didn't ask you to do it. I asked somebody else to do it. But the person is not doing it, and they are going to beat, and sometimes they'll beat me too. So what
They
should I do?
beat you for the person not doing it.
Well, you know,
Sam, I'm
and
curious, how does that show up? How does that show up then in your leadership?
and the way it, as we were discussing, and when we were presenting, I was thinking about it because the way that is showing up in the way I do things is, if anytime people ask who can do something, who, I'm always raising my hand. In fact, when I was in school, every time the teacher has asked a question to the class, my hand was up. And today, in a group, if there's something to be done, my hand is up. And I've seen that my hand has been up, and I find that I have only two hands. And sometimes there's so many things that my hands have been up that I'm not able to, and things are falling through the cracks. And as you were presenting, I was thinking about it. I said, maybe that's where it came from, because I always wanted to, I had to do it too, because this woman will come and beat me. So everything that I can do, let me do it, all the things, even if it's not mine, let me do it. And I think that's how it's showing up in. And today I'm here in Toastmaster, ICF, is this, is that, is that, is that.
BCA, this one, CTA.
Exactly. So it's the BCA, is Becca now, is Coach Africa here, is this, that, and I'm stretched, and I'm not focusing on my own company business. Of course, Joy is here, so I mean, Joy will do. Joy is doing a great job, you know. Yes, but I think as we are discussing, because I felt like sharing, because I'm sure that somebody is also asking, how do I apply, or how does it show up? And so I'm just testing with you to see if these are the shadows that you're talking about.
They are the ghosts.
They are the ghosts, right?
The ghost that creates the shadow. Yep.
Yeah, but Catherine, one thing that is interesting that I want you to address is the fact that, okay, maybe these ghosts, some of them you can keep. How do you get rid of those that really, really are not serving you at the stage that you find yourself, right?
Sarah Jesse, it's coaching, some therapy, maybe. And I'm also certified in this tool called RIM. For example, I was working with an executive who just couldn't keep her job and because her self-esteem was so low. And it turned out that it was a ghost from when she was 9 years old, that somebody that kept, that really damaged her self-esteem. So we did an exercise with them, and we turned them into a fire and put them in a fire. And ever since then, she's not been able to hold a job now. It's now 2 years, but before she couldn't. So I would say coaching, therapy, awareness, journaling, being intentional about the kind of person you want to be, noticing when you're not showing up that way. It's coaching. How does that, there's that question that you always ask, how does that behavior serve you, or self-coaching? And these days, people, I'm taking money away from coaches, but ChatGPT is a great coach. The other day I had an issue and I put it in ChatGPT and said, coach me around XYZ. And the questions ChatGPT had for me were amazing. And I was able to get processed. I'm telling you.
Yeah. But
wonderful.
I understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
it's not everybody who is really inclined to coaching, right? What are some other ways apart from coaching? You've said therapy, you've talked about coaching. If people are not geared towards that, how can they address these issues?
Sarah Jessie, what do you recommend?
I knew it.
I love the coach in you.
The
My
reason why I'm
God.
asking this is that coming from the background that we do, some people will go to their pastors or whatever and pray it out. Okay,
Mm.
say we're going for, yeah. But if that is not working, so I mean, what do we do? Will the pastors become a soft use a coaching approach to help them or whoever they consult with? What would you recommend? Now I throw the question back to you.
Yes. Um, so this is a
Catherine, let
very
me
interesting
try
one.
to.
Yes.
Catherine, let me try because of the angle that Sarah is taking us to reflect, and it is part of the reflection. You see, every problem must have the ideal solution. If you have malaria and you are taking cancer medication, I'm sure you'll die. You won't say, well, even I've taken cancer medicine, this can kill cancer, so you should kill malaria. Still will not kill it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are too many things that we spiritualize, which we shouldn't. And in our part of the world, we have over spiritualized things. And sometimes I say that we give God too much work to do.
Mm.
Okay. Some of the things that we believe that prayer should address, they are not prayer things. Doing the hard work of self-examination and getting to the awareness is important. A lot of the pastors may not be properly trained. It's just like counseling. A lot of people think they have issues in marriage, then they go to the pastor and they'll pray and they'll quote the Bible to you. But the thing that needs to be done, we don't do it. So what I think we should recommend is what you have done this evening. We have to start with a self-awareness and do all the necessary examinations that we need to do, whether it is personality, whether it is psychometric, whether it is a 360, whether we have to do that and be honest about it. And where we need help, just like when we are sick physically, we go to the doctor. And when we have a legal problem, we go to the lawyer. Let
Yeah.
us let people understand that some of these things require coaching
Mm.
and or therapy. If it is therapy, then we need a clinical psychologist or whatever that professional is. We need to let the professionals do their work, and when it becomes really, if it's really truly spiritual, then of course go to your pastor. But a lot of these are things that need deeper professional input. But because of our environment and because of our culture, in African culture, everything is spirit. So, I mean, if you are eating and you are choke, it's spiritual. Somebody must have caused it. It has nothing to do with the size of the fufu you swallowed. It's somebody must have caused it for you to choke. So,
Attack.
so everything becomes spiritual, and that's one of the things that I think we need to work on and let people understand. If the black stars are not doing well, there is no juju that they can bring. They need to get some people fired, and they need to go back to the table, and they have to stop the corruption
Yeah.
and the things that need to be done. But we just gloss over them, and we are going to call a prophet now to pray over the black stars. So I mean, because I know Sarah intentionally brought that so that we can discuss things that should not be spiritualized and things that need to be professionally
Yeah.
dealt with. So I wanted to throw that light. I don't know what Joy thinks, since her father is a pastor.
Ah.
No, 100% agreed. And I think there's this course or program we have at CTL called Coaching Skills for Managers. So you don't necessarily have to be a trained coach, but you have to learn the art of coaching so that you can use those
I guess Joy is having
to guide your
challenges.
team, or you can use powerful. Yes, yes. Okay, let's
Joy,
see. I think it's back.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
back. We can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me try again.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So,
so I believe Joy was just introducing the manager as a coach or the leader as a coach program
Yeah.
to the audience. If you need
Yes.
to learn those skills, do contact CTL. And I
Yeah.
can see that Joy has already posted something in the comments, the chat box. So there you
Yeah.
go, audience. You can reach us through this medium.
All
Okay.
right. Good. All right. I'm not seeing any more
Oh,
questions, Catherine. But I took that question. It doesn't mean you are excused. You still have to answer Sarah's question.
oh, no, you answered so eloquently, and one should never argue against a lawyer. So thank you, lawyer coach Sam. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
All right.
I'm sure.
Okay.
let's see if it
Joy is back.
works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joy,
Okay. All
over to
right.
you.
Catherine, you rest your case, right? You rest your case.
Yes, I rest my case.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much.
give us final thoughts and
Yep. Yes, yes, yes. Your final case before we let
My
you go,
final case.
Catherine.
Oh, you people, I should have known. I should have known. Oh dear. Okay. Regroup. Thank you for listening. This is a reminder that change doesn't happen overnight. If you notice any ghosts showing up in your leadership, or you notice any negative shadow, remember that the first step to change is self awareness. And through that self awareness, that's when change can start. Self awareness in itself is growth. Be good to yourself. Change isn't an overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. And what's so interesting is that I don't think that the work is ever completed, because as I grow and as I develop as a leader, I realize the more I need to grow and the more I need to develop. So make it a lifetime commitment rather than a one-time event. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.
great. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Catherine.
much, Catherine. Thank you so much. So just a quick reminder, Uncle Sam, next week we have our Leaders, our Readers session. This is going to
Absolutely.
be our last book for the year. And if you've been reading with us, just tell us how it has been for you. Share your feedback. We're reading The Richest Man in Babylon. I'm almost done with my audiobook version, and I'm reading it, I think, for the third time. So you can get it online. It's a very small book. You can finish in a day. Then join us next week. Uncle Sam will lead the conversation on The Richest Man in Babylon. Anything else from your end?
No, I want to thank you and the team for doing this all the year. We are almost at the end of the year. And
Yes.
so we are going to do that. We had extraordinary leadership sessions last week. It was
Yeah.
great. We're going to do leaders and readers. It's great. And the following week, we are going to do a time with a CEO, and we are coming with an amazing, amazing personality.
Yeah.
as they call it, self-made multinational business leader. And you don't want to miss a time with the CEO the first week of December.
December.
Oh, looks like it's the week of the election, so we may have to
Yes, yes.
do it
We have to
the
do it
other
the
week.
second week.
The
Yes,
second
on the
week. So the week
14th
of the elections, we will all, and then we'll probably after that, we'll probably be closing for the year, or we'll do
for the
one
year.
more final session, but we'll be closing for the year, I think. So that's all I want to say. But please register for the growth journey, register for the laws of leadership, which we are going to set rolling, and the other courses that we've talked about, and let us work together as we end the year and begin another one. Joy, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Once again, this show is always powered by the CTL Africa leadership team, and a big kudos to the entire crew behind the production. And we just want to encourage you to visit our website. The details are displayed on your screen. Send us a message on 055-666-7718. Book a coaching session, book a training session for your team, and wrap up the year in style. And if you're an HR or a senior manager and you're planning for next year, we also have our 2025 training catalog ready and available for you to use to plan the coming year. All right. So we look forward to hearing from you. Enquiries at ctlafricaleadership.com. Thank you all so much for spending your weekend with us. It's always a pleasure to bring you some great learnings, and we hope you found this useful. All right, so we'll come your way again next week, Saturday, with another episode of the Leadership Platform. But for now, my name is Joy Bonsu-Schmutz, and it's bye for now.
I am winning on all fronts limitlessly.
I have made tremendous improvement at work through delegating and empowering teams.
We started with the law of intentionality, which specifically makes it clear that growth cannot just happen. You have to be intentional about your growth.
CTO Africa Leadership brings you the Grow Journey, a series of masterclasses based on John C. Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. In this 10-week virtual growth accelerator, you will acquire the skills to thrive and flourish as you evolve into a more impactful and fulfilled individual. You will master the art of personal and professional development as you craft and execute your customized growth plan. Limited seats available. Register now for the next cohort.
Hey there, join the next cohort of CTL Ghana's growth journey.
The next cohort is coming on. Get involved and your life will never